actually matches that clock. You did that nicely done.
I know.
It took 6 years.
It's amazing. Well, it won't be right next month.
By the end of the meeting, it should be.
There you go. Awesome.
Reset itself.
Okay, welcome, and remember the mission of the Great Falls International Airport Authority is to optimize transportation services and development to the region, and our vision is to maximize the airport's benefit. And please remember that we appreciate your participation, not that that's ever been a problem from you guys. So thank you very much. If you have any comments, please raise your hand. We will state it. With a quorum of the board present, I call the meeting to order. Roll call. Commissioner Eritz. Here. Commissioner Bakke is here. Commissioner Lalonde. Here. Commissioner Hoban. Here. Commissioner Timbo. Here. All right. Let's start off with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll start off with the consent agenda, made up of routine day-to-day items that require board action but do not appear to have significant public impact. Items may be pulled from the consent agenda for separate discussion vote by any board member. Item A, approval of board meeting minutes from October 2022. Thank you guys for filling in for me and getting that done. Payroll checks totaling $110,992.38. C, maintenance and operation checks number 27126 through 27181 totaling $1,435,471.34. D, approve passenger facility charge totaling $48,532.60. And E, financial reports for October 22. Are there any items that any member would like to pull for additional discussion? All right. Can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda as stated?
Make a motion.
And a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor of accepting the consent agenda as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda as is. Director's report.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Happy November. The first thing I was going to report, because I think one or two of you might not have been here yet, but we did hire a new airport accountant. She was here a moment ago.
Shailene.
Shailene, if you didn't get a chance to meet her. So she started Monday, right? We were here Monday, yeah. So she started Monday, and she's going to overlap with Stacy yesterday and today, trying to get up to speed a little bit on everything that's going on. She comes to us from the insurance world. She had a, what do you call it, an independent agency, I guess, that she was doing up until now. Her background prior to that was in accounting. She was a senior accountant for, which local bank was that? It's, you remember the?
I know.
I heard local bank. I didn't hear which local.
It's
bank.
First.
Mountain West, but
Mountain
Was it
West.
It was a Mountain West.
she worked there.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's one of
There's
the.
been a couple.
One of the local banks prior to that, and so she has an MBA. I think it was a good pickup.
Yeah.
She'd actually contacted us when we first hired Stacy, not realizing we would close that position. So we kind of had her out there when Stacy resigned. So good news there. We've got somebody filling in into that role already. Next Tuesday, December 6th, I'm on the consent agenda over at City Commission to ask for an increase in our TIF allowance. We'll be amending that TIF agreement to increase the amount of the reimbursable. We initially had asked for $700,000. The project actually finished at about $1.1 million to get those utilities in. There were quite a few changes. You may recall when we got that initial development agreement signed, we were clear back in the end of 2019. So the engineer's estimates were based on 19. And I have a list here of some of the things that happened to get that cost increased. For instance, we were required to do traffic control on the roadway throughout most of the project construction. MDT wanted us to have a flagger there, even though we were well off the road. We didn't initially think we needed that. We were just going to reduce the speed limit. But of course, he who holds the gold makes the rules, right? We ended up with a flagger pretty much the entire project. We initially, our initial engineering calculations, we thought we needed a 12-inch and a 12-inch water line, 6-inch sewer line. As the city put the stuff into the model, we ended up with a 16-inch water line and a 12-inch sewer line, so substantially more infrastructure in terms of pipe. Obviously, it was like the worst time ever to buy pipe during COVID, and so those cost escalations were pretty healthy. We initially thought we could bore under the road for about $25,000. That ended up costing us $94,000. MDT, even though that's road's not in great shape, it's pretty old. They have a no-cut policy, and so we weren't allowed to cut the road. We ended up having to bore under for nearly $100,000. We had to lower an existing 16-inch water line. The initial as-built showed that we had enough separation, but as we got in there on the north side of I-15, we realized that we were going to have to separate those in depth, and so we ended up having to do some work there that we weren't initially planning to do. And then we had about an $8,000 change order to install pipe bends to allow the new water connection to meet the existing water line. There was, again, a little bit of grade discrepancy in there from what the as-built showed when we built that line. Gosh, it's been 6, 7, 8 years ago, wasn't it? So we ended up with some extra parts in there that accounted for that additional money. And so ideally, if we get through that commission meeting and we get the okie dokie to increase that amount, as soon as we can kind of get Shailene figuring out which way the bathroom is, we'll start submitting reimbursement requests. I think we'll probably just submit one large reimbursement request for the full amount since the work's done. Last calculation I saw from the city, they thought we'd have about $300,000 on hand in that TIF that we could draw on, and then the rest would have to be bond funded next year. Of course, at the end of November, all the taxes should be paid, and so they were hedging their bet a little bit on how much would be in that account. We thought it was closer to $400,000. So we'll see once we get the payments in the system from, obviously, Love's. I think this is only their second payment. We determined that I-State wasn't actually paying into the TIF. Those property taxes were going elsewhere. We found that last year, and so notified the state that needed to go into the TIF. And then, of course, Eagle Jet's really only been making payments for a couple years, too. So as long as no one protests, we should have a pretty good handle on how much the TIF district should be generating in total to service those bonds come December. So good development there. Let's see.
Before we jump past that,
Yep.
Commissioner Wolf, any other comments on city, how things are moving with COVID money, and how comments for us?
Yeah, we're in the process now of reviewing the submissions that we received for the ARPA dollars, but we haven't made any decisions on those yet.
The guard dirt strip, for those that didn't hear just beforehand, we're continuing to discuss that with the guard, trying to figure out how we get through that process. We have the current location. The main issues are that is the future location that for the terminal building and the taxi lane that goes over to the eventual third runway. Third runway probably many years off. The terminal development probably a little closer, but still years off. But the main problem we have is we need a mechanism somewhere that allows the guard or obligates the guard to maintain the dirt strip. And then also when they're done with it, should they go to a different airplane or maybe that mission requirement goes away, a means of getting rid of the dirt strip, because what direction is that? West, thank you. The west end of that dirt strip will be suspended about 15 feet in the air on dirt. And there's a hammerhead up there for turning around. So it's a substantial amount of dirt we're going to put out there in the airfield. And we just want to make sure we have a way to reclaim that and get that out of there once we're done with it. We identified a secondary location, which we're in the early stages of looking at. Last week, Rod and I went out in the airfield and drove around some and identified the space between taxiway C and runway 17. We think that might be a better site. There's not a lot of infrastructure in there, and obviously there's no development potential between there. I think they're separated by about 400 or 600 feet. Center line to center line, 400 feet. So we might be able to sneak that right in there. Obviously, because it's the runway, the area is already graded. There's a gentle runoff into the ditch there, which we could use for drainage for the dirt strip, and we wouldn't have a head wall of dirt anywhere. So it has some real potential. The only conflict we've been able to really identify right away is the pappies that are in that area. So we'll have to look at, what would be the cost to flip the pappies to the other side, the precision approach indicators. When you fly in, you see the lights. Could we flip the pappies to the other side? Given that we could potentially have taxi lanes on both ends of the runway, we think their initial request of 5,100 feet might shrink enough that maybe we could relocate the pappies on one side and potentially have the dirt strip go one direction, leave the pappies on the other side. So some things that we're very early in looking at it, but we think there could be some potential there. We'll continue to explore that. Construction update, you probably saw we just opened up the furthest south of the doors today. The contractor came in, pulled the tarps off, and removed all the stuff out of there, so those doors are open. We have a very tiny area that needs to be poured yet, kind of on the third doors as you're looking from this end. We've got a couple panels missing in there. They're going to kind of rope that area off and open up that door too, so you can kind of go around it. But we'll be looking for a warm day where we can get those other panels poured. They'll be getting the drainage pipe completely hooked up, so all that canopy in the front of the building will be flowing into that new drain pipe. It's already hooked up all the way up to the middle of the building. We just need to hook up that last part. If we can get a warm day, we'll complete that last bit of concrete and be done with it. We did sign a change order. There was enough money in the budget the board approved. Clear last spring, that we signed a change order for about $10,000 for weather protection for that concrete so we could get it in. We had to heat the ground because it was obviously frozen after a couple weeks of cold temperatures. And then we had to cover the concrete too to keep it warm as it was curing last week. So we'll use an allowance up to $10,000 to thaw that ground and complete the last section too. Hopefully we'll be done with that project here maybe in the next month, I would hope. We've pulled all the work out of the back of the de-icing pad there. You've probably seen all the equipment's gone now when we drove in. We're winterizing that site and it'll set kind of as it is until next spring when we come in and do the second phase. The taxiways are open again, so we had Alpha and off and on Romeo 1, Romeo 2 closed.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, makes it much easier to get in and out.
Getting going back and forth was painful.
Yeah, and so now everything's open for the winter. We'll come back in the spring and finish up that project. For now, we've got everything shut down for the year. And then the ticketing lobby, the contractors continue to frame kind of right below us in the new Delta Allegiant ticket counter area. They've blown out quite a bit of the walls back behind between the airline spaces. And they're getting ready to begin enclosing the back of the building. We're hoping to have that back of the building enclosed in the next couple of weeks, I would think.
Yeah, they're starting to frame that other stuff today.
Yeah, they've got this side all framed, and they're going to start bricking that, and then they're going to begin framing the other half over here underneath the expansion area. And then hopefully we'll be enclosed here in the next month, and then they can really start to pull out some of the walls between the airlines and back in our baggage claim area, so that we can open that area up. We're starting to talk to TSA about moving the screening machine. Alaska's screening machine will be the first to go. The plan is to kind of just move it to the back and have it sit there in case the other one goes down. I was talking to DCS this morning about using one screener. They think they can do it. This would be after Christmas. January, February, March, kind of the slower time of year. They think that should be okay to have one, but they'd like to have the other one ready to go in case this one breaks down. Apparently they're both prone to fault codes and they shut down. It's hard to get them back running again. So,
Just to clarify, you're talking about the under the terminal check baggage.
yes,
Okay.
the baggage
The
screening
TSA is
machine.
doing it.
Yep.
Not the upstairs stuff.
No. So far what we're hearing on the screening side is really positive. I thought they handled Thanksgiving really well. They have quite a bit more staffing than they've had, even under the TSA, for a while. And so they were able to field 2 lanes during busy times last week. They have quite a few, about half their workforce right now is is from out of town. They're out here working from various other sites that the company has. That'll be transitioning over the next month as they get their people back from training and get them through the on-the-job training that has to happen here in our checkpoint. So people are kind of coming and going from out of town right now. That'll slowly transition into us having our own screeners. Been talking to them this morning. A couple of those screeners actually want to move here. So she thinks she'll be able to retain some of the people that are in town working, which is real positive.
Dig that,
So I think most of them are from Rochester and Portsmouth, New Hampshire, so they know what winter is. So, yeah, so far so good in terms of screening. And then the real impacts of the project will really start hitting probably after Christmas and New Year's as we start to really impact the airline counters. Right now, it still looks like Delta will be moving into their new counter sometime February.
Yeah, late February, mid-February.
Mid-February, and Allegiant also. And so that'll be the first kind of new area occupied. So
And that'll be right underneath us on this far end.
They're probably about where that door is back down the hallway there. So they're kind of back in there. If anybody wants to go look at the construction area after the meeting, we can certainly go down and grab some hard hats and go down there. So it's pretty awesome down there. So we're excited. Let's see, what else on construction, Rod? Did I miss anything?
I think you hit
Most of the high points?
most of it.
Yeah. We're getting ready to start design on next year's program. Met with FAA yesterday to begin talking about next year's program. Right now, the main projects we have going next year are the canopy. We'll be retrofitting that, rehabilitating that. It'll get a new roof line, metal shed roof to an open gutter system rather than the enclosed gutters that are busted right now. Something we can see and work on rather than hiding it in the structure itself. We'll be replacing the lighting in there, quite a bit more lighting. Over these entrances, we'll go to a pitched roof. So there'll be a pitched roof structure over the top of that. That'll allow the water to get collected. That'll also provide us an opportunity for lighting in those pitched roofs. I think ideally that'll probably be a combination of metal roofing and plexiglass to provide us with an opportunity to really brighten that up and change a little bit of how that looks. Then we'll be cladding the outside to give us some raceways for additional electrical, because we're going to put new signs on the canopy and also lighting. There's very little lighting under that canopy today, so we'll be adding some lighting, some conduit, and some raceways behind that cladding. Did I miss anything on that? That's pretty much. Oh, and then the columns. Our current thought is we'll likely pour a protective ring around the existing column footing, and then there'll be probably some heavier gauge metal that'll cover the above piece just to provide some architectural interest and kind of protect those columns a little bit. So we haven't finished the design on that. That'll be what we'll be starting here pretty quickly. In addition to the canopy, and then the west vestibule, we're going to combine that with the canopy project, similar project. We've got to rebuild that entire structure over there. There's way too much wind coming in and out. Yesterday, as I was walking in and out, that whole corner is just freezing because so much wind is escaping in and out of there. We had a good pile of leaves going back when the trees were shedding leaves too. So we've really got to do something different there, which will probably be a 90-degree two-door system to break that wind. We're going to make the superstructure a lot heavier than that plexiglass, which tends to flex. We'll probably add a hip wall of either concrete or brick, to kind of firm up that structure some, and really get that area kind of straightened out. And so that'll be the canopy project. We also currently plan to renovate the entry road, that section of road from the highway right away, all the way up to basically the guard entrance. That project ideally will make a larger left for the guard to get into the guard base. We'll also hopefully add an outbound right lane. There's a single lane today. We'd like to have a second lane, which will eventually tie into the roundabout right, if there is a roundabout. If not, it'll just become a right lane. I'm increasingly thinking that project's never going to fit, but You know, if not, then it'll become a right lane, but that'll at least give us 2 exit lanes in there to help meter some of that traffic. And then we'd like to get a little bit more width on the Love's entryway. They did pave a left that continues throughout there, and it's painted in and out to make the left entrances, but we'd like that to be a couple feet wider, just not quite fitting the traffic in there. We'd like to see fit. And so that project is on the board. Ideally, that project would include closing Airport Avenue B and then shifting all that traffic onto the Love's Road next to Love's there, so we can kind of clean up that Mang entrance. If you look today, Airport Avenue B offsets the Mang entrance, creating a very odd head-to-head. In addition, the FAA won't allow us to pay for any portion of that road that's not exclusive. So what we're aiming for is an agreement with them that the right lane is non-exclusive and we will have to pay for the right lane in up until Airport Avenue B. If we can shift that back to the Love's entry, that gives us a couple hundred feet less of an eligible lane, because all of the Swanson property, all of the jewelry guys, everything else that's getting built up here would be on that Love's Road and off of the airport entrance. And so that would pick us up a couple hundred feet of eligible lane miles, which you can imagine with 4 lanes is quite a bit of pavement. I mean, we're certainly talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, plus any improvements in the intersection there at Mang. So we're probably talking, you know, order of magnitude $300,000–400,000 worth of benefit if we can get that road shifted back. That project would complete that entire new entryway there with a mill and overlay, you know, kind of like we've done the rest of the other roads in there. The other projects we have out there next year, we want to complete those taxiways that were initially ineligible. The FAA had told us this year the new rules didn't allow us to pay for GA taxi lanes if they were within 40 feet, was that 70 feet? Yeah, 40 or 50 feet of a hangar door. At the regional conference, we brought that up as an issue that needed to be discussed, and through that discussion, we were able to get the FAA to agree that those are probably eligible. So their current plan is to reimburse us for the one we built last year up near the T hangar, and then we want to complete the other 2. Right now, we currently have a compacted gravel base, and if we can build on that in the next year or so, you know, we won't have to do a lot of rework. If we wait a few years, that's going to have to be reworked, reformed, recompacted. You know, we'll lose all that good compaction work. Right now, we're at grade, compacted, pretty much ready to pave. So if we can get on that early next year, that'll benefit us in terms of project costs. So we want to build out the rest of those 2. That'll complete our development of the GA area down there. We'll basically have all the utilities, taxi lanes, roads, everything in, and ready for private hangar development. So
Just in time for the prices to come down and hangars to go up.
hopefully, yeah, definitely. And then the third project we have next year is a fog seal of taxiway A, basically an oil maintenance coat of taxiway A. About the time it gets 10, 15 years old, FAA wants you to do a maintenance coat to close up the seal, anything that might have opened in there, the space between the rocks, that type of thing. So we would go in, remove paint, seal, repaint, and currently we don't think that'll result in any closures on the runway. Obviously, we'll have parts of A closed while they're doing that work on A. And so those are the projects we have planned for next year. Ideally, I would have liked to have brought some of those to the meeting today, but we're a little behind switching engineers this year with our process. And so hopefully at the January meeting, we'll be bringing those projects forward for approval, and then February, and then they'll bid in April. Kind of gets back on track.
Security.
Oh, yeah.
System.
You may have seen that we did get a scope of work for the security portion of the terminal project. That would be to acquire cameras, access control, pin pads, and a badge reader, cameras, and a computer system to host all of that, to the access control system and capture the video and that type of thing. We did get a scope of work from the engineer. We determined it was a little higher than what we wanted to pay. So we've decided that we're going to try to go directly out with the design build. I talked to the FAA a couple weeks ago and told them that, so we wanted to proceed with acquisition. They were fine with that. That'll allow us to use an RFQ process to, based on qualifications, to pick a security firm that's experienced in airport systems, access control systems. And so we're be putting together an RFQ here in the next couple of weeks and trying to get that out shortly after the beginning of the year to attract some companies that want to come in and develop that system for us. The types of companies that are in Johnson Controls, for example, is a big player in that arena. We've already talked to the Montana airports to kind of see what everybody else has, and if they like or dislike their system, what they like about it, what they don't like about it. So that's given us some ideas on what we want to incorporate in the system. Ours is a fairly simple system. We think there aren't that many doors that we really need to put it on initially, but we definitely want to get a system that's robust and can easily be updated so that we're not changing out systems every 10 years. We'd like a system that would really last. And so we'll get that out on the street here shortly and hopefully find out who our vendor is sometime in early spring, get going on construction of that. Anything else? Did I miss any?
I think you got most of it.
What's the update on the snow blower?
I'm gonna guess about August of
Next year.
23,
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll have to use it to snow blow some smoke. So about this time next year, hopefully we'll be fielding that snow blower. The good news with that is, as we've said, we got a federal grant and a state grant, so that'll be 100% funded. So pretty exciting to get that piece of equipment.
Did you guys figure out lighting, the outdoor lighting for the front Great Falls?
The sign?
Oh,
sign.
that project should start here pretty soon.
Yeah. No, we killed the lighting to the existing sign because the only way to get into it is through a crawl space along the front of the building in the 3rd floor. And trying to get in there and do work is not great. And so we killed the lighting to it entirely now. But we were able to get the FAA concurrence on a project to go ahead and start the new lighting project. What we don't know for sure yet is how much outdoor work he'll be able to do in the winter, because we'll be replacing, if you think of the sign now, we've got that big kind of square piece in the middle of the terminal. The current sign is kind of in the middle of the square. The new sign will actually go down the cooling tower. It'll be GTF, actually goes up the cooling tower, GTF up the cooling tower, and then over here right above us on the balcony that goes around the 3rd floor, there'll be Great Falls International Airport written around the 3rd floor, kind of matching what we have on the other side. And so we'll have those two signage elements in the outdoor portion of the signage package. There's also an indoor portion. We'll be removing the blue sign that kind of hangs this way, kind of parallel to the escalators. That's coming out completely. It really doesn't provide any wayfinding advantage having it there. And then we'll be replacing that large blue billboard sign that's over top of the escalators. Some of the messaging on that isn't accurate anymore, and the sign just looks pretty rough. And so we're going to take that one down. It'll be replaced with a sign that matches the 2 all gates. It'll be a rusted patina. There'll be a large beam that connects those two concrete pillars and to hang the sign from. And then on the top of the sign will be a big clock. We get a lot of requests for a clock, believe it or not.
Yeah.
I mean, I think probably all have 3 of them on if you thought about it. But we get a lot of requests for clocks, so we'll have a big central clock there in the middle that kind of gives people an idea what time it is. And the one request from that is it's going to have a remote that we can use from.
You don't have to go remove it yourself.
No,
Don't have
giant
to
poker
batteries.
stick.
I suggest reconsidering the order of the letters, going top to bottom rather than bottom.
What?
We've gone through that a few times.
I'm in favor with you, by the
People
way.
read
Yeah.
top left, right.
The problem is they're putting the letters
It's a flag. It's a flag sign,
Yeah,
so it'll actually
G
read
and
up.
T and F this way.
Yeah.
See, with you and me, we go G, T, and F down.
That's
I'm
what I
not-
would do
Okay.
it.
That's
So this,
That's
I'm
the way
this-
people read now.
I remember this from like 5 years ago,
correct. Hasn't moved since.
and that was awful then.
What?
You went with the awful one?
No, the whole picture was nice. It's just the order of the letters.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's backwards.
You got 3 votes for up.
Hey, I used to design displays.
4 votes
I'll
for down.
recommend go top to bottom.
GTF, pointed that.
We've looked at a couple of them online, like Pasco, if you Google Pasco,
It's
there's
going to confuse
the-
people, I'll guarantee it. You're going to get a lot.
We'll let you continue on that road.
It's back there.
GTF. All right, any other good comments or updates? All right, let's get to busyness here. First on item, and number 1, remember any agenda items that present a conflict of interest and subsequently require a member to abstain, let me know. And no. First item, car rental agreement extensions.
You want to present that one, Laura?
Sure. So we brought this to the work session last month, and decided to go ahead and work with the car rental companies on an extension for 2 years. Their 5-year contract will be up at the end of this year. And so they were all very agreeable for a 2-year extension. It's not a great time for them right now. They're still short on cars.
At the
And-
same time, our compensation is at the higher end,
Yes,
because the rental car business has been pretty strong.
yes, yeah, for sure. But just not the best. We figured if we did do a bid right now, we wouldn't pick up anybody new. And really would probably have MAGs, minimum annual guarantees, that could be equal or less than what we have right now. So, especially with lack of competition, pushing for someone else trying to get in there. So, they were all very agreeable to that. They're very appreciative of having this extension right now, and it's something that a lot of airports are doing right now with the car rental companies. So we worked through the contract. The general consensus was to just continue with everything just as it was. Enterprise wanted a few changes to it. They wanted quite a few changes to it, but the rest of them wanted to keep it like it was. So basically, kind of a majority ruled, and we wanted to keep it like it was as well, because otherwise it didn't give us the benefit to do an extension. So in this extension, everything will stay as it is, extend it for 2 years, make the minimum annual guarantees for year 6 and year 7 of this contract be equal to what their minimum annual guarantee was for year 5. So if they had $160,000 was their MAG, that's what it's going to be for year 6 and for year 7. The one thing that we did change is to add in that MAG abatement language in number 3 of the extension agreement that you guys were provided. And that is language that pretty much Enterprise has put that language out there, and pretty much everyone is accepting this language. Before, we had language that said if the traffic here drops below 25%, that they could ask us to renegotiate terms for them, which what we did for them during COVID was actually a model that they used for other airports to look at. They really appreciated and said that we took care of them. So it wasn't a matter of us not taking care of them, but they just saw the need, really probably for the first time on a mass scale, where they needed to have language that protected a little bit more. So this is what Enterprise has been pushing out to everybody, and what people are pretty much accepting. So we will change the abatement language that just says we're going to use 2017 as our base year for this contract, because that's the year, that was the last year that they had before they bid for 2018 through 2022, this 5-year contract that they're on. So we'll use the employment numbers for 2017, which was $172,540. And if for the 6th year of this, if our employments go down from that 172,540, by whatever percentage it goes down, we will reduce their MAG by that same percentage. If it goes up, it doesn't matter, because they just pay what's over their MAG anyhow. Same thing with year 7, use 2017 as that guideline. So we thought that that's a pretty fair way to handle it, because they are bidding, saying that 2017 numbers will stay in place or grow. Most of the time we should be growing. So that's the only change that goes into effect. They're ready to sign and get these executed. So that's what we would ask is that you'd approve this 2-year extension with the 4 companies.
Just for comparison, what's our current employments this year so far?
About 150,000. Well, we estimate the year into 150,000.
150, so we'll be below that number for this year.
Yep.
And how do we other hit that?
Is that the fiscal year, Laura, or is that
That's calendar.
calendar year? Yeah, so 150.
But things are ramping up. Okay. All right. Can I have a motion to allow the staff to work with the car rental companies towards a 2-year extension with similar terms as previously discussed for the amendment to the rental car agreements?
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? No further discussion. All in favor of accepting the staff's recommendation to work with the rental car companies, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Continue. Excellent. Number 2, capital purchase of the phone system.
Laura, do you want to present that one also?
So you guys know that we got fiber into the building, which is a huge upgrade for us. And with doing that, now we're able to send our internet over, or our telephone over the internet as well. And so we are looking for a new phone system. Our last one is Avaya. I was here when it was put in, but I can't tell you exactly
More than 12 years
when
ago.
it was. It's been a long time, and they've basically gone out of business. We can't get any support with them. We have major problems with our phones, the actual phones, and then with our lines. Our lines are old CenturyLink lines.
The current phone system still runs over a copper phone line.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the most fun thing that we get to do in the office is you dial and then you have to hang up and dial again. You have to do it twice to get it to go through,
Oh,
every
boy.
single time. And that is fun. So we are looking to upgrade majorly, but not for a huge cost. So I'm actually in the process of looking for a new phone system. You have to have that VoIP has to be hosted. So I feel confident that we can get it done for $5,000 or less for the phone system. Actually, one of them that I'm looking at has, through the end of the year, they're offering free phone sets if you sign up for their service. And so I feel confident that we can get this done. And then as far as the service that it costs, they usually charge about per phone $20, $25, $30 per user on the line. So our costs are going to be lower than what we're paying CenturyLink right now for these phone lines. So all in all, we're going to be doing better, but I can't tell you exactly what phone system we're going to go with yet because we're still researching that. But we would ask you to approve spending $5,000 or under for a new phone system.
And obviously that's for all the phones, the rental car company,
No.
everything in the building.
No, they've all got their own lines.
So, and they've gone to fiber as well already?
Most
No.
of them are all.
It depends
phone
on what they,
systems.
yeah, it depends on what they did when they settled in.
But now that we have fiber in the building, many of them could go to VoIP. And I think, isn't United going to voice over IP
Yeah, I think
currently?
most of them are already.
Yeah.
They all have their own phone systems.
What was your internet prior to fiber?
Blackfoot?
Out of Missoula, actually Missoula and Bozeman.
Yep. And now we've got KDS. And so we had to pay $5,000 to get the fiber from more or less where our sign is out there into the building. But now the monthly cost of the internet is gone,
Cut in half,
cut in half. So I
more
mean,
than half.
Yeah, so I mean, that will eventually pay back over the next couple of years and,
Mhm.
you know, really get into that fiber line. And obviously, a much faster system too. The nice thing about it is it really cleans up the airline situation. As I think United and Delta both own like I think 2 pair of fiber apiece, which isn't enough for their current operation. So KDS put in, how many lines came in?
96.
Like, yeah, like 100 pack of fiber. So now they all have enough fiber once we go to the new IT room in this development, in the current project. We have enough fiber for them to get what they need for their upgraded systems. So it worked out really nicely, and then all of them can contract directly with KDS. Currently, everybody kind of flows through our Blackfoot account. or not everybody,
Some of
but
them.
some of them do. And that'll clean that up too, so we don't have that pass through anymore. They'll be able to contract directly for what they want. So yeah, we're looking forward to cleaning up. Yeah, and right now the paging system doesn't work either. We're pretty sure that's because of the phone system's dying piece by piece.
It's a needed upgrade.
Your regular announcements still come through in the boarding area though.
The recorded announcements go directly to the server, so those actually work. But it used to be we could dial from the phone and get the intercom, and for some reason now we can't do that either. And I think it's got to be related.
Well, and our phone system right now too, I don't know if you've tried to call us, but it's not working with the computer where it turns off and turns on at a certain time. Like I was here last weekend and the phone was just ringing off the hook and there was nothing I could really do about it. So we've got to get it fixed, but Avaya just isn't the answer right now.
All right, it's time. All right, can I have a motion to authorize the staff to select and acquire a new VoIP phone system for the amount not to exceed $5,000?
I move.
Second?
I'll second.
Any further conversation, discussion?
I just have a question, general question. Do we have a threshold that something like this has to come to the board? A dollar threshold, or is it that we're citing something, or
If we don't budget it in the operating budget as small capital, then we don't have it in there. And so typically we would budget something like this in small capital. But not knowing that KDS was going to be an option, when we adopted the budget, we didn't include it. And so now we know we're there. But no, I mean normally if we had it in somewhere where we could cover it, we would just send it through. Yeah.
Excellent question. I was thinking the same thing, but good. All right, no further discussion. All in favor of authorizing the staff to select and acquire a new VoIP phone system, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Works. All right, number 3, capital purchase, design, and construct west vestibule entry replacement.
As we said earlier, the current door configuration with 2 doors on either side of the end of the building, which was undoubtedly done to try and reduce the wind load, still hasn't reduced the wind load. And so many days we have to close the left door because the wind directly on it just won't allow it to operate. And in those situations, sometimes the door actually, if it does open, will blow the other door right off the track, so it doesn't work, and then we have 2 doors we really can't use. And so in looking at the door and sitting down with our engineers, we think the right solution is actually to come into the building about 8 feet and build a second set of doorways. We'll close the doorway on the left permanently. There'll only be a doorway on the right. And so when you come in from the rental car area, you'll come in on the right side. We've got to flop the ADA ramp to do that. The ADA ramp is currently on the left door. So we'll flop the ADA ramp on the other side, put a door over there. Then when you come in, obviously you'll be coming in this direction. You'll take an immediate left, and then you'll go through the second set of double doors. We'll need a minimum amount of separation in there so that you don't open both doors with one person. So we'll have to figure out what that is and what the cadence of the 2 doors, how quickly we want them to open and close in order to prevent that pressure difference of having both doors open. And then in addition, we want to harden that outer wall. There's been some damage to it. It's right at the end of the rental car lot, where we can expect cars to continue to molest it a little bit from time to time along the plows. And so we want to harden that with a tougher structure that will take that wind load a little better without flexing. We'll probably replace the roof line with some type of shed roof. Again, probably a metal shed roof. That membrane roof that's up there doesn't right now drain anything. We've got to kind of figure that out. It kind of drips onto the ground. We'll have to figure out where we can tie it to some of these ideas and see if we can get it down to our new sewer pipe. We may have to go underneath the sidewalk to do that, but we could probably, with a small drain like that, we could probably hammer that under. And so there's a number of design challenges that we need to take on with that project. We will be combining this project once we have budget approval with the canopy project, so the budgets will be combined. It'll be one design scope of work. It'll likely be one bid in order to increase the amount of work to try and make it a more competitive project. But in order to do that, we think we need an added budget of about $250,000 for design and construction. We'll be using our infrastructure bill money, that's the bill money for 2023. Those funds should become available here in the next month, we hope, so we can start the design process, and we'll be matching that with our 10% required match for about $250,000 total.
Okay. All right. Can I have a motion for the staff to approve a funds not to exceed $250,000 to replace the west side vestibule?
Amazing, 100,000 design just for a restaurant. I mean, I just,
That's what I just,
mean,
as
this-
you just said, that's unbelievable.
it just seems
Hopefully the prices are coming down.
totally out of scope.
Yeah. I mean, there is quite a bit of engineering that's going to have to go into it, because we'll likely need a new foundation. So it's going to have to be from that foundation up. But once we combine it and we send it out for IFE, that'll give us a chance to renegotiate the design contract. I don't know, Rod, if you looked at the IFE on the canopy.
I haven't looked at it.
We just got it back
Just got it.
like Monday. So we need to work on those budgets, and I think it's probably something we need to have a discussion with that project team, about
If that's realistic or not.
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, no, when I saw both budgets, I told them right away, I think it's too steep. We already cut on the canopy one quite a bit, the design budget. This one we haven't really touched yet, because we're just going to combine it and then look at what we've got, and then get the IFE, which should help us some, because that'll be an independent engineer looking at what they think it costs. And then we can look at, how we can cut that down some. But yeah, I think we can probably work on that scope of work some to get the cost down. I think we need to.
And looking at the details, they sort of nickel and dime you to death on it. It's just, and it adds up.
Yep.
So, do we want to have that worked up as a single project before approving it? Or do we need to get this approval to move forward? Or instead of approving this independently of that, then you're going to combine them anyway?
Well, we think it adds about $250,000 to the total budget to do the west side canopy. So my recommendation is approve the budget and then let us manage the project. I mean, we're going to go back and try to
You've
negotiate
done
the
that
scope
before,
down.
you've got costs down and stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely need to work on getting those costs down. But then we don't meet again until the end of January. So if I can get the project where I'm happy with it, I'd like to start design, because we want to be building this, next March, at least have bids by March. There's quite a bit of design work yet to do, so.
All right. Still looking for a motion to approve the staff to funds not to exceed $250,000 to replace the west side vestibule.
Make the motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? I like the discussion already on the cost containment, so we'll see if we can work that with the combination. All right, no further discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Do some magic, save some money. All right, next on the list, light industrial condo expansion and lease terms.
Yeah, so we've got a multi-motion project here to come before the board. We need to do a couple things, or at least bring them to the board for consideration. As you know, we've already acquired 3 units between us and Dick Anderson for the condo warehouses for next spring. The Nucor is the steel provider, and we've acquired 2 of those units through previous board action. And Dick Anderson has acquired the 3rd one. We should have pricing on all the subcontractor work later today, so we'll actually know what the total of the units are going to cost. That'll be very instrumental in helping us to market them. But the good news is, in the interim, I've been having a long-term conversation with a manufacturer, food manufacturer, And he's very interested in expanding his operation, and it'll require him to re-equip, pretty much double his output, but he's got most of that additional output sold. So it's a pretty easy buy for them in terms of the market wants more of his product and he wants to produce more, so that's a pretty easy thing to do. He's been up to see us a few times, gone through our snow building, which is very similar kind of in dimension to what we're talking about building, and he's determined he needs 5 units in order to move his operation. His current building is cut up different than what we will have, but it's about the same size as 5 units. And so his initial move, he wants to have 5 units up here. In talking to Dick Anderson, what we're proposing is that we would buy 1 additional unit, and Dick Anderson will buy the other additional unit in order to make that happen. And so you can see here, among the things we're asking the board to consider, the first is we'd like to acquire a 3rd unit in the condo building, the first phase of the condo building, for a cost of $600,000. That would be the third, the added cost of the 3rd unit, in addition to the 1.2 we invested in the first 2 units, bringing us to about a $1.8 million total investment in those first condo units. The existing tenant that we're bringing in wants to lease their building initially. They feel that for their operation right now, they need to buy quite a bit of equipment. They would have to do quite a bit of work, leasehold improvements to get their operation in there. And from a cash flow perspective, they really want to keep it in a lease. Their ideal situation down the road would be they hope to build their own custom building in the development, build-to-suit. That would be their ideal, probably in the next 5 years. They think that building would probably be closer to 30,000 square feet total. My contention is they'll probably still need units, even beyond that, and so there's a decent chance they might go ahead and build a custom building and end up in these units that they're releasing right now in the long term anyway. For us to begin leasing the units, we need to put together a form lease that the board can approve. We talked about this a number of months ago, that we would be leasing these units, and even probably a year ago now. And so Laura has developed and had approved through our attorney a form lease that we would use for tenants wanting to lease condo units. We've included that in the back here. It's a stable document with a yellow name in the front. This is what we would use to lease units to whoever we would lease them to. And obviously, over time, we can either lease or sell units. The leasehold option produces nice income for us, whereas selling them, we get a nice return on initial investment. And so there's benefits to both. It'd be nice to have a portfolio of both over time, units we've sold, units that we've leased. That was kind of projections we initially put together for the board, was assuming some leases, some sales. Over time, Dick Anderson will do the same thing. The units that they are going to lease initially, we would get a ground rent on from the tenant. So immediately from the beginning, we would start generating ground rent on Dick Anderson's units, in addition to whatever cash flow we generate from ours. The third point we're asking the board to consider is our lease term sheet. As we're working with this tenant, we're kind of at the point where we need to pull the trigger on those 2 additional units in order to get them this next year. There's still quite a bit of demand for metal building, and so as we've outlined with them over the last couple of weeks, the ideal timeline would be if the board were to approve the 3rd unit today and the lease terms and the form lease, we would try to negotiate with them to complete the lease by the end of the year. That would allow us to buy the 2 additional units and have everything erected by August. They would begin moving their operation at that point, hopefully be in and operating not shortly after September. So that's kind of the timeline we're on. The lease terms that we're proposing right now currently is a 5 or 10-year lease. We'd like the option to negotiate either one, with a 5-year option at the end to stay in those units at the end of that initial lease term. We plan a cap rate of around 7.5 on the cost of the building, and so that yields a projected rental rate of $17.50 to $21, depending on where the final cost comes in per square foot per year. We would like to offer, we think this tenant's an important tenant. Number one, they're the first tenant in the development. Their style of operation is precisely what we think would set the tone for the development of this of future buildings. We think they're a tenant that's going to attract other tenants like them. In their first 5 units, they want to have a restaurant component. Our zoning allows that. There isn't a lot of light industrial land that would allow that. So we provide a benefit to them in that regard. But it will also generate traffic to our development, which we think can be instrumental in selling additional units. We think they are the right tenant, the killer tenant. And so we want to get them in. Obviously, they're a food producer. They fit the intent of the TIF development agreement. We're confident in that. It's important to their operation. They're currently hamstrung. They need to produce more and they can't. So it's important to their operation. This gives them a very visible location. As people come into town, it helps with their brand awareness. And it helps with our brand awareness in terms of having these units out there. We think it's a really symbiotic development. And because of that, we'd like to offer a 2-year rent abatement, which essentially means we'd be carrying the cost of the buildings for the first 2 years. That's going to help them to retool and make the investments they need to make to upsize their operation in our location. We've produced a forecast. You can see the initial forecast we produced generate about an 8 to 10% return in the long term, assuming multiple units. For the purposes of this analysis, we just consider the 1 unit, well, actually 3 units that we buy, but the one development, just to look at that on an isolated basis. Even with the 2 years of rent abatement, we still think the return on investment is 5 to 6%. We don't have a lot of investments that yield 5 to 6% for the authority, and I think we should be willing to get this off on the right foot, to have an immediate tenant so that we're not out advertising for a year where we would lose that initial development anyway. We think the right thing would be to give them a rent abatement for the first 2 years. With that, we're pretty confident we can nail this tenant down. They've said that's a big factor. We'd ask the board basically for 3 motions. One is to approve $600,000 to expand our initial investment in units in order to buy that 3rd unit. Number 2 would be to adopt the form lease that Laura has put together in the back of the packet. And number 3 would be to allow us to proceed on the lease term sheet terms that we have here in 4.3.
Gotcha. So just to, our lease abatement would be for the 3 units, but Dick Anderson would still be charging rent for their 2 units.
Yep.
Is the plan.
That's the plan. They would begin charging for their 2. We would get ground rent, so there's not a no income situation. If you look at the sheet in the very back, the little sideways spreadsheet, it's not on the very back, sorry. It's on the very back page of 4.3. You can kind of see down there in the 2023 cash flow, we began generating land rent right away. So we get about a quarter of land rent in 2023. The next year we would begin getting full land rent on those units as that development expands. And then we would begin generating our own building rents in 2026. As that building rent, the full amount of that building rent comes in, it'd be about $150,000 in income a year for those units, those 3 units that we would own.
And with the TIF reimbursement, our out-of-pocket expenses and the payback for those out-of-pocket expenses are going to be minimal.
Pretty much. I mean, so we've spent, let's say we will have spent $200,000 in paving that won't be reimbursed because it's not road. It's bid, basically, around the building. So there's $200,000 there. There's also the unit costs. So the unit costs are somewhere around $600,000. We'll know that actually later today. So we've got about 1.8 plus the 200,000, about $2 million invested that will be in total in the entire development. We also have spent 1.1 million in utilities and road. So we now have, if you go out there right now, we have a road with 2 entrances, which is required for fire protection. The city will reimburse us for the road. The city will reimburse us for the utility. Well, according to the agreement, and should they decide to increase the budget, they will reimburse us for the total road costs and the total utility costs, which is 1.1 million. So we'll be out basically $2 million, but we begin generating income off of that $2 million next year with land rent and then eventually building rent. And then ideally, we'll be building more units alongside that, which we'll either be reselling or we'll be leasing. Or Dick Anderson will be building more units, in which case we'll get more land rent for it. Every one of those units, we recover a piece of our initial development, $200,000. Every one of those, our $200,000 factors in to the total return. So if Dick Anderson spends $2 million, like we're about to, then they would be recovering $2.2 million over their next 3 units. That $0.2 million will be recovered to us. So we'll get a portion of their building rent or their sales proceeds going forward.
Todd, does that cash flow to you?
No, but we had a little committee meeting on this that we set up. And I personally, myself, I think it's what we need to do. It's to get the momentum. First then it's always tough, but I think, this is what we're doing, and it seems to fit perfectly. I agree wholeheartedly with John, and I can't speak for the
I agree.
other committee.
There's a lot of
If you
down the
build it-
road potential too, that if this works out would be wonderful, so.
Yeah. We're working on another development that we really can't talk about, but it would be a significant amount of acreage that would be very compatible with this.
Has building warehouse rents gone up dramatically in the last year?
There isn't any. I mean, if you go out on LoopNet right now, Great Falls doesn't have any buildings. They're
Available buildings.
right. I mean, there just isn't any industrial space in town. You can go out and build, but this is the cost to build. And that's the problem is we're completely out of space, and the cost to build is this. When you look at Missoula, we were able to find a similar building, has some similar characteristics over in Missoula. The rent on that building, I want to say, was 16 per square foot.
About a year ago, I was looking at Missoula for an opportunity, and I was seeing 12. And then when I see these, I'm like, you look to be out of the game to be even close.
I just don't think there's any available space. When you look around even the state, there just isn't much available space. But look out on LoopNet again, and there are some shorter warehouses near the airport in Missoula that go, I think they're 12.
Right.
But I mean, you're talking a much lower ceiling height and a much smaller unit. I would be surprised if they have much in the way of oil water separator or anything like that. I mean, what we're building is truly industrial space, and so I mean, it's got a pretty significant capability. And we'll see. I mean, when we get pricing today, it could be, I mean, I've discussed these ranges with this potential tenant, and, I think they're in. They've had their production manager up here looking at how to lay out the space. So I mean, it could be we get this one in and, we take a hiatus for a while because we can't build for what the market will pay. That's a possibility. But hopefully some of those costs are going to be coming down over time, and demand is ratcheting up. Not so much in Great Falls, but in these other markets, you are seeing rental rates like this for light industrial space. And keep in mind, we've got day one welding power, the capability to have doors on both sides, drive-through space, oil water separators in. The building itself will be maintained by the condo association. So you're not replacing roofs, you're not replacing walls. You've got pavement around the entire thing as opposed to gravel. This particular user needs the pavement for some of their uses. It has some unique characteristics, and city water, and this particular user, that's a necessity. Out in the county, you could drill a well, it's just how much water can you pump?
Well, we're talking on the net option 3 here, section 3 is triple net lease. So are we really only, are they only paying for maintenance inside the wall, inside the studs, or
Yeah,
are we
so-
maintaining the roof?
No, the association will maintain the roof. Now, initially, they're the association, but as more units are sold, just like any condo, the condo association will maintain the exterior. I mean, it's all metal construction, so, there isn't a lot to be done.
So they, as in the condo association, as in the people inside the building, we are not going to be liable for any of the maintenance above ground?
No,
All right,
no, that's, the condo association does that.
gotcha, gotcha.
And who's setting up the condo association?
We'll initially set up the condo association. We're working with Mick on that. He's actually done quite a few condo associations. But then as the board is set up, the unit owners will take over that condo association.
And since there'll only be one unit initially,
Initially, it'll be just them.
they'll be talking to themselves.
I mean, there shouldn't be anything to do, for quite a while.
Yeah,
Um,
brand new. Yeah. All right, excellent. So 3 motions, we'll talk about them. And on the first motion, obviously, the notes in the small section we want to include that the extra cost of $600,000 is contingent on negotiation of a successful lease before ordering additional materials, right?
Yep. Yeah, we
So-
want to get the tenant, they're aware of it. They know, we need to get this done next month, in the next month, in order to get those units ordered to have them in the ground this year. And, both Dick Anderson and us are on the same page. It's no reason to buy them if this tenant doesn't want them.
Gotcha. All right, so for the first one, can I have a motion to authorize the airport director to authorize expansion of the light industrial condo in a cost not to exceed $600,000 contingent on the successful negotiation of lease terms to the prospective tenant?
Make that motion.
Sure don't want to repeat that for me? Second? Second. All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion regarding that?
We need to talk about feasibility financially. I mean, throwing around $600,000, where's that money coming from?
The 600,000 comes from reserves. So right now, we're out, roughly about 2.4 million. We've got about 9.1 million in reserves. Shortly after the first of the year, we should get reimbursed our first $400,000 from the city. Then the plan with them would be to bond finance the remaining $600,000 sometime in spring. So we should have about $1 million coming back in, $1.1 million coming back in between now and June. So in the interim, we'll be out that 600,000 additional, dollars. But right now, we're setting on reserves about 9.1 million. We also have a PFC application every month. That PFC revenue, I think last month it was 48, which you guys adopted earlier. I think it's about 60,000 a month. That reimburses $2 million for the debt service we've already paid off. So every month, we're clearing $40,000 to $60,000 in net cash flow that goes right into our reserves. So we've got 1.1 sitting out there about to come back in over the next 9 months. We've got $60,000 per month with a no offset. So that 60,000 goes right into reserves to help build reserves. And we're also drawing on these projects that we have over here. But right now, in terms of cash position, we're in better shape probably than we've ever been. We've paid off all debt service, so we really don't have any outflows other than operating costs and project flows. Almost all of our project flows, except this one, are 90% federal dollars being matched by 10% local. The terminal project will consume over the next year probably another $7 million of that 9.1, because that one we're getting reimbursed from CARES and Carissa and ARPA. And so we've got probably another 500,000 or so we need to pull from those grants to help offset that cost. So I think we'll still be in a good position. I think we'll still be $3 million in reserves even after we take this out and we pay for the entirety of that ticketing project. After that, really everything else is 90% on the rest of the terminal work and the airfield work we're doing. So we should be in good position cash flow wise.
And if we don't get the lease, we won't spend the money.
Yeah,
If the
that's
lease
true.
doesn't come in, so we'll be right where we're at. Good. Any other questions? All right. All in favor of authorizing the airport director to spend the extra $600,000 for light industrial condo with the contingency on successful negotiation of lease, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, spend it wisely. All right, next one. Has everybody had a chance to look at the form lease? It looked fairly straightforward. Can I have a motion to allow the airport director to approve the form lease for the, you want to put first 3 units of the, this one says 2. Approval of the first 3 condo units in the light industrial condo.
That's my fault.
Okay, but we got, you can pen in 3 for that, assuming the option 1 goes. So first 3 units as described in the form lease behind. Motion
I'll
second. Any further discussion on the form lease? Okay, no further discussion. All in favor of accepting the form lease as written? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Form lease is good. And third, but not last, but not least, approval of the airport director to negotiate a lease for the first 3 authority-owned units as described in the term lease agreements below. Anything specific I need to say about the term lease agreements below?
No, I think, there are some ranges there. I think, the cap rate, we want to be 7 to 8, somewhere in there, with a target of 7.5. That's kind of what we had said initially in our projections for the development. Triple net, the main thing is for this first tenant, we are requesting 2 years free rent. And just by way of comparison, we did the same thing when I put the first 2 uses in Colorado Springs Business Park, Northrop Grumman, and Aerospace. Both of them got 2 years free rent to give them time to get in and begin amortizing those buildings and get up to speed. And so we want to do the same thing here. They're moving a pretty major operation. It's going to be capital intensive, but it really does do a lot to set the tone for our development.
You got that?
Yes, they do.
All right.
And it really wouldn't set a precedence in my mind because it's such a unique initial deal that the next one comes along as, well, I got 2 years free.
I wouldn't propose it again unless it was a massive, massive deal.
Similar.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah, or even bigger. I mean, we want to keep the fish, going up the ladder. And so, the next one would have to be even bigger, anything like that. But I mean, I really do think, we would likely sit for months, if not a year, maybe even 2, depending on what next year looks like, before we get a tenant anyway. Having, day 1, a tenant in and begin generating income, I mean, that's a much better situation.
Well, just the signage, the visibility that's going to be there, people are going to know, what's that?
Right.
And then people from there.
Has there been any further comments or discussion about the previous original tenant that was going to go in?
The car wash?
Yeah.
No, I tried contacting them and they're not returning, I haven't tried contacting them in a number of months, but I did try initially to contact them. I think the one across the street really took a lot of wind out of their sails.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say somebody built it already.
Yeah. Yeah, they initially thought they could operate both, and I don't know how busy that one across the way is. Yeah, we had to talk to them, and gosh, it's been about a year.
What's being built right across the entrance to the garden?
It's got, a guy bought a piece, he's a construction roofer. He bought a piece of the
Swanson's,
And he's just putting a construction office
office and
a little shop and stuff there.
with a good view. I like that. I like that. Not as good as my view, but it's a good view. All right. Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor of accept?
We don't have a motion yet on the third one.
Did we? Oh. Oh, that's right. We started with the motion, and then I asked for clarification.
Yeah.
So can I have a motion to accept everything that we talked about a minute ago regarding the lease term agreement for the light industrial condo for our first large tenant with 3 units? And a second. Is that clear enough for you, Laura?
I got it.
All right. And any of the further discussion? All right, with no further discussion, all in favor of the lease term sheet negotiation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so be it. Anything else?
Just one more.
There's a letter.
Oh, yes, on the very back page. All right, last but not least, the letter of support for the wayfinding grant.
So we were approached by the downtown bid. They're pursuing a grant for wayfinding in the community. You may have seen some of the blue signs around that kind of point to different community assets. They would like to pursue another grant, and they've asked us to provide a letter of support. Obviously, as a public entity, we have to bring that to the public in a public meeting to determine. We think wayfinding, we bring a lot of tourists into the region all summer long. Wayfinding is important in the community. And I think there's a worthwhile reason for us to lend our support to the bid in pursuing that grant.
And we already have a bunch of wayfinding signage out there, correct?
There's quite a few, out there existing already.
Okay. All right, can I have a motion to go forward to accept our support for the Great Falls Business Improvement District's wayfinding, what's the word I'm looking for?
Great.
Wayfinding grant. There we go.
Make a motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'm just ignorant. What is wayfinding?
Basically signage. Have you seen the blue signs that say Great Falls at the top, and they point to like Ursuline Center and Charlie
Giant
Russell
Springs.
Museum, any kind of museum in the community? There's kind of a tourism wayfinding program that downtown BID has been kind of the driving force behind it.
Oh,
Yeah.
So the signs that say, go this way to get to Giant Springs?
Yeah. And they want to pursue some kiosks throughout the community, which would just be tourism-related kiosks to tell people where to go and things around, and so this grant will help them achieve that.
Okay, good question. Any other discussion? All right, no further discussion. All in favor of supporting them on the Main Street, or the Great Falls Business Improvement District wayfinding grant, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. All right, and then I would like to go one last review after comments from the board regarding our signage orientation. Can we get in front of the board a last look at, before we put the GTF on the board, what the proposed orientation will look like, and then an
We
option
can.
to reorient that? if
That's
possible?
going to delay the design 2 months. I mean, if that's really something, we want to look at.
I mean, I think it's significant enough that we should at least look at it. I mean, the last I saw was 2 years ago. We had multiple options come in front of the board on, hey, we'd like to do this, or we'd like to do this, but I don't remember ever agreeing to, this is option A, that we want this to go forward.
It's always been the same architectural drawing, the one, we talked about colors and whatnot, with the board several times. And so essentially,
Right, the GTF coming down the cooling tower
Yeah.
is basically the focus of the question.
yep. So we have 100% design with basically that. It's a flag sign.
Yeah, so-
Because we have this cooling tower that looks like a flag sign. And so
Right.
we put,
But do we have that in a architectural drawing of all of the design across the front of what the finished product is going to look like?
yep, yeah,
Can we get that out in front of the board for them to go, this is worth us reviewing and changing, or this is acceptable?
we can. I mean, as I said, our next meeting's in January.
No, I understand that part. I mean, can you email us those pictures, and if we need to have a meeting in December, then we can call that up?
I just want to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote that down on my little note to, any board member can put an item on the agenda, and it's a big enough deal to me that I want to see the picture.
Okay.
And I also,
And so I
and
think,
see what the dollar amount associated with, if we're all in agreement of changing it is.
if it puts it back 2 months, you can't do it in the wintertime anyway. They're
Well-
going to work on the internal signage
Yeah, maybe we'll have to go back to the design company to have it redesigned, because the bid documents were bid. I mean, it's been bid. You know, this was the project we did last
Right.
year, we didn't get bids on. So it was bid last spring. You know, so I mean,
$250,000 to put in a set of doors, I mean, God.
And we're gonna put up with it for another 10 years, so, you know, I think it's worth, I'm not gonna be here unfortunately, but for these guys to decide if it looks good enough for them, then move forward with it.
So they already made it? Is that why it's gonna push? I guess I don't understand.
We-
I know you bid it,
yeah.
but I don't understand this.
Well, I mean,
The letters are-
those letters they're not individually, they're probably connected, right? Because the electrical.
So they've already
There's gonna be
made it.
one penetration, no, you know, it's already been bid like this. So what we'll end up with is, we gotta pay a designer to redesign, right? I mean, because it's gonna have to be fed a different way. It's gonna have to, you have to show Guy Tobacco, I want this, and I want the electric fed this way,
Yeah,
you know, instead of this
potentially,
way.
yeah.
And then, you know, I want it hung this way rather than this way. I mean, they have to have shop drawings, you know.
Sure.
You know, so we've got to reproduce the shop drawings. And, you know, we've changed engineers, because this was a CH2M Hill project. So now it's going to be a Morrison and Merrily project, unless Jacobs wants to pick up the redesign. You know, which is at their discretion at this point, we don't have a contract with them. And then we've got to give that over to Guy Tobacco and have him rebid. You know, I mean, is it different, is it the same, what's the cost to do that, rather than that? And actually, he's not producing the signage, he has a subcontractor who's actually building the sign. So he'll be giving that to his sub to build, to look at that sign.
Right. And I agree with that, but, I mean, just simple things like, if we tried, the last set of lights came up, can't even get to the lights to turn the lights off, or change the light bulbs on the other ones. Make sure that's included in the plan, and make sure that's, we've got a sign that says Great Falls that we all want to drive up to and go, yeah, that looks really good. So, I felt that's that important. I think Sean feels that way.
Let's send a picture first.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could send
Yeah,
it.
it'd be nice to see the
Yeah,
picture.
send us a picture, and
Yeah.
then if we need to, we'll go, hey, let's bring this up in December and meet early, and we'll have a,
We have a meeting in December, don't we? Oh,
Christmas party.
which was, yeah, I was
that
gonna
was a
say.
tentative meeting.
Yeah,
I know we have a party.
we were.
That is the meeting.
Well, we've had, we have done business prior to the Christmas party in
Yeah.
years past.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just need to notice that meeting like next week, right?
No, it's on a Wednesday, so we could do it on that
We can do
Monday.
it, okay.
Perfect. Will you do that for us?
Yeah, I can
That'd be
send-
great. Send the picture out.
I don't remember seeing that, but I trust you, it was. I
Yeah.
just-
Yeah, it's always been, you know, in all those.
Well, I know originally when we first started talking about it, it was that way, but I don't ever remember approving that particular configuration as part of the whole front facade.
When you said it, I thought that the letters were orientated up and down, but flag orientation is compatible with the way people read. It's just,
It-
we always,
Yeah, we'll look at it.
I mean, it goes from bottom
Yeah.
up, but
I agree.
that's the way you gotta look at it anyway, because the letters are orientated that way.
Let's look at it and see how it looks. 'Cause I still want something when you drive up, you go, hey, that looked awesome. Versus like, what's that saying? All right, and that, so you guys will handle that for us. All right, with that, let's finish off with Airport Authority Board comments. Commissioner Hogan.
Go Cats.
Yeah. Commissioner Timbo.
None.
Commissioner Aaron's.
Yeah, one thing, I've had the pleasure of serving as a city representative for my current time on the board. But if you remember, Dave resigned from the board for health reasons. And I've always, even though I enjoyed it, I felt a little bit awkward not being a city resident representing the city. I mean, they were okay with it, and it's not against any of their policies, but living in the county, I just thought it was an opportunity to align things a little better. So I applied and was accepted by the county, so then I resigned my seat represented for the city. So now I'm not representing the city anymore, I'm representing the county.
Gotcha.
And the city's going to advertise for someone to replace that slot.
Correct.
So just let everybody know.
Yep.
And
And
it's
just
for
that.
1 year. It's
For you, just being said, I had another really good individual.
Oh, I thought you were gonna have your new 3 years.
No, it's only 1 year. I
No,
filled Dave's remaining term,
I
and then
just
I
kidding.
have to reapply. But I would have done the same thing for the city, I had 1 more year.
Yeah.
And so it's, you just reapply,
Yeah.
and if they can vote you in or pick someone else, so.
And Commissioner, just a comment from that too, is I had another individual that was very interested in applying to be a commissioner for the city, who lived in the county.
Right.
And I'm county and he's county, both working for the city, but they denied him the opportunity to apply because he's not in the city now. So evidently the policy has changed.
Well, I think, as we talked about before the meeting, that the county didn't, because Deb Evans was on
Yeah.
the county, even though she lived in
Right.
the city.
Right.
And that their policy and their rules for
Right.
lengths of term and how many terms you could run,
Right.
they didn't have a policy or whatever, and the city does.
Yeah.
So I know we're interviewing someone Tuesday before our work session.
That to fill my slot.
That's to fill
But
your
then
slot.
his slot will be open into January and they still have not applied for that slot. Or
Okay.
I don't think they posted for that. Have you heard?
I don't know if they posted for that.
And I
think they
left
were
a couple
trying
of
to just use
messages
the
for
same-
Krista and have not heard back, so. I
Oh.
don't know what they've done.
I remember my first board commissioner training, that ethics class, they had a policy, something about city residents, but there was an exception or something more for this one, since it was a crossed over, you were allowed to represent the city.
Oh, because of the airport authority.
I can't remember, that's been a long time ago.
So what they told Dick Swinson was because he had a business in town, because he was also lived outside. But I remember him saying that he was told since he had an investment in the community, that they would appoint him from the city.
I brought it up that very first meeting I had, and the lawyer for the city said, pointed to something, and they were fine with it, but it always just felt, I don't know, so.
They don't hold that same view if you want to run for the city council. If you live in the county but own property in the city, that doesn't count. Or that's what the city lawyer told me.
It does not count, really?
Pardon?
You were once a city appointee then, weren't you?
I was,
No. And you live in the county, don't you?
correct.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't, that never came up during the conversation.
So the other one, the additional one, the one we're replacing you,
Yeah, you guys are interviewing to replace me,
Okay,
but the one is now open will be from.
and that will also be city.
That will also be a
Yes.
city.
Okay.
She said she was gonna advertise in December or something.
All right, Commissioner Lalonde.
Go Grizz.
Okay, well, I would like to finish up by, number one, thanking all of you guys for putting up with me for 6 years. Thanking the city for investing and trusting me to pursue the goals. I think everybody knows that aviation is my passion. If you haven't, then you haven't been watching the meetings quite enough yet. I pretty much live at the airport. When as they say, when my ship comes in, I'm gonna miss it because I'm at the airport. So over the last 6 years, it's been fantastic. We've made a lot of progress, I think, in improving relations with the city, getting the 9/11 Center moved forward and in a comfortable position. We were able to bring Loves on board, and I think that looks fantastic, and it's an addition, a great addition to the environment up at the airport. It's not a low-end truck stop by any means. It looks good and works well. We were able to bring the Great Falls Jet Center and the huge hangar down there. We wish them best in getting big airplanes in there like 737s that'll actually fit in the hangar, who knows. Plus, we've got a lot of GA improvements doing so. Building the GA infrastructure is very important to me. Being a GA guy, I've been flying little airplanes since I was 16 years old, so even though I moved up to fly big airplanes, still the little airplanes, and probably see me flying around in my Marquetti making smoke is still very important and practical. So those are just some of the highlights. If I don't see you at the Christmas party, I plan on being at the Christmas party. Thank you guys for being a fantastic board to work with and really caring about improving the airport. It's been very important for me to make that happen, and I think we've all been on the same team and worked very well to make that happen as well. So I'll see you guys on the 14th for the Christmas party. And the final coup de grace, first you guys have to tell me if it's actually installed yet, but I've been lobbying John Hart to get an actual water bottle filler in the water fountain going to gate number 1 because everybody's trying to fill it on the water fountain and it never works. Did you guys get it put in yet?
It's here, but not.
I know, I actually looked at it, so I sent him a picture from Denver, said I want one of these. So, all right, and that's what we got. So water bottle filler should be going in shortly, going to gate 1.
We do have one downstairs, so.
I know, but you never think about it. And you can't bring the water through security. Well, I can in uniform, but nobody else can, so you have to fill it up on the inside.
Now, we should have it up.
So, thank you guys very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And look forward to working. Any additional comments from public?
Yes, Susan Wolf with the city and just interested citizen. So John, of course, I don't know who the potential person is for your condos, but when they get in there, will they have signage that can be seen from Interstate 15?
That'll be a question for the city. Yeah, I mean, ideally, I mean, I think it'd be wonderful to have it on the entire, interstate side of the road, because I think it's cool to have our community associated with a big brand, and and so yeah, I mean, that's one thing we talked about a couple weeks ago is, man, if we can get a waiver, we should do a big sign out there, and I even said, we'll add wayfinding signs, to your operation on the airport roads because we control that, and so there's something you can't do at most venues, because no one else owns the roads. But I said, heck, we'll throw another blade sign on the bottom of all of our signage to send people your direction, because I mean, it's good for us, it's good for you, and we also talked a little bit about we still have some space beyond the existing billboards. If they wanted to construct a billboard, we'd let them have free signage on that for 10 years before they turned it over. Then eventually we would operate our own billboard down there, which could be a lucrative investment if we didn't have any capital in it. So we've got a couple ideas how to really direct some signage there. And so that as we get through go no go in the next couple of weeks, those are some of the cool details that we'll be working on to try and get them situated. But yeah, I mean, it's, I think, a really exciting development, frankly, for everybody, for the community, for this business, for the airport. I think it would be a big deal, and so really excited if we can get that going.
Was this a lead from LoopNet?
What's that?
Was this
It's not. No, in fact, we did the opposite. I had been talking to this individual for over a year, and just stopping in, checking things out when I was around their operation, and just kind of trying to advance things, and then so when we finally got to where we had renderings, I stood up the LoopNet ad, and kind of included things I knew they would appreciate in there, like zoning allows for a restaurant, things like that, because I knew that was important to them, and so the LoopNet ad kind of followed what we knew they wanted, and then send the link obviously and said, hey, this is up, if you want to check it out, and so then you can see who's been checking you out in the back end of LoopNet. And it wasn't even a couple of days before they were checking it out. So we knew they were pretty interested, and I think what's really going to get it done is that 2 years, because they have a desperate need to expand. But the capital to build something of their own and retool is a lot of capital, and it's really not where they want to be right now. So this gives them an option to get in there and kind of bite-size it, potentially get rid of some of their existing stuff, and sell that to help recoup that retooling cost. I think it's going to be a really good situation for everybody. So.
Yeah, especially if they decide in 5 years to upgrade to build their own.
That would be the home run, because I mean, if they build their own facilities and potentially even need some more in here, because I mean, if you think about it, these are the perfect back office for a large producer, because you can kind of flex them up and down. You could sublease it. If you had a buddy that that you're associated with that has some of his production items where he's got a lot of inventory at a certain time of year, you could sublease to him. Then your time of year, if it doesn't match their time of year, maybe you're sharing that space. I mean, it's a really flexible model, and there's a couple ways this could go. Kind of one of the things Dick Anderson and us have been talking about is, once they get their first 5 units in, this first building will hold somewhere between 10 to 13 units, depending on how much grading we want to do at the end, because it slumps off if you look over there. You know, so we might not want to go beyond 10 on the first building. The other ones will hold 13. So we might cap that in wall for the time being and jump to a second building in the event that they get into next year and say, we need more space, we want 5 more units, you know, because that's a real possibility. Their business is growing quickly. And so, you know, being able to accommodate that, you know, in a matter of months, I mean, no one else in town can do that. You know, where we could say, oh, you need to double your operation? Sure. You know, we can have it in place next year, you know, and 5 more units and we're in business, you know. And so, you know, that's the nice thing about what we've got setting there. The footprint of it's very flexible, you know, and this first unit won't have any divising walls, you know, because they'll be taking all 5 units. And so, you know, we may continue to expand in that format on that existing building and just skip to a second building. Really isn't much added cost in doing that because we bought the plan set. The plan set can be built anywhere on that site. You know, so it's pretty easy for us just to jump over.
Yeah, one end wall, basically.
Yeah, I mean, basically, just like we did when we expanded the SRE a few years ago, you'll saw off the footer, pour a new floor to marry to the saw part, and then just move the end wall.
All right, any other comments? Final admin item. What time and when is the Christmas party? 14th of December, Wednesday,
4:30.
4:30 upstairs?
Yep.
Excellent. Kids at 4:30 or everybody?
Everybody.
Okay. Dinner at 6? 5?
6.
Dinner at 6.
4:30 is
Happy hour?
hour and White Elephant. 6, John is doing the presentation. 6:30, dinner.
There we go. Now we got the full idea.
And you're welcome to come, Susan, if you'd like.
So I'm hoping I'll be back in town in time. I was just thinking, I wonder if I'll be dressed appropriately to just stop in here if I'm coming by.
You're in Montana.
You will be.
You're always
I'm
appropriate.
just-
Yep, absolutely. We're not fancy.
You put on your clean blue jeans and shit kickers, right? Did I say that out loud? Sorry. Okay. With no further items to come before the board, I declare this meeting adjourned, and it's my understanding we have no work session because we have no items for it.
No, we'll start fresh with the new board in January.
All right. Thanks, y'all. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.